My name is Marilyn, and I'd like to talk to people about achieving fluency in reading using audio-assisted reading techniques. I have a Master's of Philosophy in specialising in reading difficulties, and I was trained by Dame Marie Clay, who's the founder of Reading Recovery. I've been a classroom teacher, resource teacher of literacy. I've had an interest in helping pupils who've struggled with their reading for many years now. It started when I was teaching a group of class of 20 or so. They called them slow learners, poor things. They were 14-year-olds. They had a long history of struggle with their education. They were really just biding time until they could leave school, and they didn't want to be at school, and they made my life such that I didn't want to be at school either. And not one of them could read fluently at well, although 14 years of age they couldn't read much better than a typical 8-year-old. And all those years ago there was nothing that would have interested them to read. And I actually left teaching that year, and I went back to university and said to Marie Clay, you know, what my concerns were, and she developed Reading Recovery for 6-year-olds, but she helped me to do my master's papers and thesis in struggling readers. And in place of a thesis, my folio of casework involved teaching pupils the very hardest to teach, with years and years of struggle behind them, and to meet with her to talk about what I had been doing with them and what I should be doing with them. And the programs that I developed came out of that background.
For 25 years I've been a psychologist, and I trained with Dame Marie Clay, who most people may not know is a psychologist herself, and she trained us very much to know about literacy. Since then I have been a district manager for the Special Education New Zealand, which is probably the same position as a Director of Special Education in this country. But that's not the reason that I have a real passion about helping children with reading difficulties. As you can see, I wear hearing aids. I was born with a 60 decibel hearing loss, and because of that I had major trouble learning to read. My mother and my 3 sisters spent a long time talking to me when I was young, so my strength was my ability to speak. However, my remedial reading teacher, Mrs. Mackay, who I can remember every detail about, I can remember how she looked, how she smelt, because her husband owned a tobacco factory, and the way she behaved. I did everything I could possibly do to get out of reading. The reason I tried to avoid remedial reading is that the teacher tried to teach me to my weakness and didn't teach me to my strength. She tried to teach me letter sounds and consonant blends, and many of those I still can't hear, and I was never able to hear. So that was always going to be my weakness. So to teach me letter sounds, words in isolation, and phonics was never going to work. If she'd been able to use my oral language ability, she would have been teaching to my strengths. So what we're going to talk about today is focusing on how to teach children to their strengths and not to teach them their weakness. How many of you have got children in your class who can read better than they can speak? It's logical that we should use the children's strengths to teach them their weakness. Almost all children can speak better than they can read, and we can use the speaking knowledge to help them learn something like reading, which may be a weakness.
What I have to talk to people about, I believe, will be of interest to classroom teachers, specialist teachers working one-to-one or with small groups of children, teacher assistants, advisors, administrators, and people who have concern for pupils who are right through the age range, less than 7 years of age, right up to young adults. I'd like to talk about what reading fluency is, why it's important, and convey some easy, enjoyable, economical, effective means of improving students' fluency in reading. Let's start with a definition of what fluent reading is. Fluent reading, according to the experts, is accurate, It's effortless. You can read without conscious attention to every word. Fluent reading is appropriately phrased, it's well paced, it's smooth, it's expressive, and it is well understood by both the reader and the listener. Now that understanding is paramount, because without understanding what we read, it's not really reading at all. We consulted some pupils about what they thought fluent reading was all about, and for starters they told us what it's like when your reading's not fluent. They told us it was slow, it was full of mistakes, it's got no meaning, it's got no expression, boring, hard work, it's kind of jerky, and it's shameful, so not much fun when you're not reading fluently, according to the pupils. We also consulted the experts about what fluent reading is and why it's desirable. And they told us that fluent reading is a reliable indicator of present and future skills in reading. So if you can give me a 7-year-old and they're not reading fluently, the chances are they won't be reading fluently later on in life unless something is done about improving their fluency. Fluent reading is also an indicator of the development of reading skills, how easily they will become fluent at reading. It strengthens present and future skills in reading, and it's a great builder of confidence and motivation in reading. What instructional strategies will foster fluency? Explicit instruction is certainly an instructional strategy which will foster fluency. There's a place for teachers. We can teach phrasing. We can teach pupils to be expressive and to attend to punctuation. Modelling. A lot of what we learn as humans, we learn from modelling off others. And the same is true in reading. You can shortcut that learning process to becoming a fluent reader by modelling off what other people do, what good readers do. Practice with a variety of different text types. This will improve fluency in pupils. Becoming comfortable with one kind of text type, of course, isn't going to make you fluent in reading a whole variety, so it's important to get that variety there so that pupils become comfortable reading a variety of different text types and genre and authors. High interest books. Now, this is more than half the problem with a lot of pupils. They're not interested in what they're reading. High interest books that will foster expressive reading is a very important instructional strategy. Text with an appropriate level of difficulty. There is just a very small window of opportunity where pupils have the right amount of supports and challenges from which they can learn to become fluent readers. Anything which is more difficult than about 90% accuracy is going to be a struggle and a turn-off for pupils. Repeated readings. Now the research is very clear about the importance of repeated readings for improving fluency. How often do we listen to a pupil read and then take the book off them and move on to a new book? So much can be gained by allowing them to engage in repeated readings, reading the same text more than once. What other instructional strategies will foster fluency? Supported reading practice. This can be in the form of a better reader, a parent or a teacher. It can also be in the form of a CD to listen along to. Performance readings with feedback. Now, a lot of your pupils are probably not having many positive performance readings at all. It's a fairly negative experience for them if they're struggling with their reading. It's absolutely crucial to set our pupils up to be able to read well. A lot of them don't know what it feels like to read well. Our good readers are forever engaging in positive performance readings, and we should set our struggling readers up to read positively as well. You can do this with repeated practice, support, modelling, and then you find yourself in the position of congratulating them when they're doing the right thing, rather than forever hounding them to go back, try again, fix up, sound out, whatever strategy you're trying to instill in them. Catch them when they're doing it well, and it's far more positive for all concerned.